And whereas much of this progress can be attributed to the qualified and dedicated teachers entrusted with the educational development of our children, and whereas teachers provide opportunities for students to connect with the world around them, develop basic skills for success in life and work, and experience the realization of high expectations and the fulfillment of steps toward achievable goals. And whereas teachers should be accorded high public esteem, reflecting the value placed on their skills and abilities and the importance of public education, and whereas it is appropriate that teachers be recognized for their dedication and commitment to educating their students, now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim May 3rd through 7th, 2021 as Teacher Appreciation Week, and May 4th, 2021 as Teacher Appreciation Day in Washington, and I encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance. Signed the 3rd day of May 2021 by Governor Jade Inslee.
I think we're having Bill Bevel accept the team. I don't know if you all want to come up and as a team accept the proclamation. And maybe Bill, you can introduce everyone also.
Normally we do the handshaking. These are members of my executive board and the officers of the union. Christy Peake. Treasurer Melissa Powers. Maggie Hunter is a teacher at Covington's on our executive board. Arch Hogan, who is our labor ambassador. Accept this award on behalf of the teachers. This has obviously been a very tumultuous year, and it does feel good to take a moment to appreciate all of the hard work that it's taken. We think the district and being able to work with us to make sure that all of our students and support of the school and the work that we did. Oh, okay. So thank you very much.
I think that people maybe have some things to say too. But you have to stand on the wall. You can't leave.
But this is a two-way thing. Yeah.
So I just wanted to take a minute because Bill, you're absolutely right. It has been a very difficult year on everybody involved, and everybody stepped up to the plate and has done what's best for our kids and students. So we'll continue to do that, and we're going to continue to do it into the next year and the year after that, and the partnership will continue, and we'll just keep doing what's right for our students. And we just wanted to say thank you to all of you for the work that you do with all of our teachers in the buildings. And they're most valuable asset in our district. We got to keep our teachers happy and keep our kids safe and happy and keep them learning, and that's what's important here. So thank you very much for what you do.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't at least get the names of a couple of teachers who really meant something to me when I was growing up here. I don't know if you know their names because they've long since retired, I think. Kathy Stelfox might be one that you know. Barb McGuckin, who actually saved my life. Gwen Williams, who was the first Black teacher that I had. She was fearless, teaching everything. And I still remember that experience in the 6th grade with such fondness. And I also want to recognize that it's easy to see how much harder teaching is this year than any other year in the 150 years of public education this nation has had. There's been so much more work to do. There's so fewer ways to sort of lay hold on the cues and the reassurances that you're bringing your excellence to your job, which I know I need in mine. And there's nothing else to say about that except thank you. Just to feel that appreciation. I knew I had to say that tonight. One of your members was, I'm not going to name her or him. It was pretty vocal in criticism about the planning for this school year. And I had my own feelings about it, but then I had a parent come to me and say, you know what? And not in connection with any complaints or anything, just happened to be that woman's daughter was in her class. It was in a little remote class. And the feedback that I got was, she loves her. She's wonderful. I guess I can say she.
Yeah, I think you
She
have.
loves her. She's wonderful. This is the best experience that she's ever had in that kind of environment. And well, that makes all of the irritation just evaporate, doesn't it, when we know that they're helping kids? Thank you. Thank you so much. Such energy and dedication to kids. Thank you.
Oh. Another group of people that without whom we could have not made it through this year, I'd like to have you help us celebrate School Nurse Day Appreciation, because let's face it, we had the measles epidemic, and then we had COVID, and our nurses have been there every step of the way helping us through this obstacle course. So I'd like to turn things over to Julie, who's going to read a proclamation for us
And
today.
Julie, can we have Holly and the nurses that are here come up front?
All right, State of Washington Proclamation. Whereas students are the future, and by investing in them today, we are ensuring our world for tomorrow. And whereas families deserve to feel confident that their children will be cared for when they are at school, and all students have a right to their physical and mental health needs safely met while in school setting. And whereas school nurses have served a critical role in improving public health and in ensuring students' academic success for more than 100 years, and act as liaisons to the school community, families, and healthcare providers on behalf of children's health by promoting wellness and improving health outcomes for our nation's children. And whereas school nurses address the home and community factors that impact students' health and support the health and educational success of children and youth by providing access to care when children's cognitive development is at its peak. And whereas school nurses are professional nurses that advance the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievements of all students by serving on the front lines and providing a critical safety net for our nation's most fragile children. And whereas school nurses are members of school-based teams to address the school population and school understand the link between health and learning, and are in a position to make a positive difference for children every day. And now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do here proclaim May 12th, 2021 as School Nurse Day. And it is signed by the Governor on the 3rd of May, 2021.
Thank you for recognizing this. I'm embarrassed because last year I droned on about measles. And now I'm standing up here talking about a pandemic. It's just, I don't have a lot of words to say, but I did invite two of my nurses who have been boots on the ground in their buildings, and I'd like to invite them up to say a few words about what it's meant to be in the school setting during this pandemic and helping kids enter school, learn safely. So we have Maggie Conlon Marks, who is a school nurse at 3 schools. She's at Gila High School, Crestline, and Harmony. And we have Trudy Forbes, who's high school nurse at Heritage High School.
So I won't forget anything. So thank you for recognizing and appreciating this. Besides being a nurse for the school district, my assigned schools, as Holly already said, are Harmony Elementary, Crestline Elementary, and Lax Health and Bioscience High School. As school nurses, we have always had a public health role, looking for trends in diseases or presentation of symptoms. During COVID-19, the nurses have supported the district as a whole and our schools individually, learning how to manage and monitor COVID-19 in addition to present at Camp Evergreen last summer, managing and guiding health and safety protocols. Trained staff for the quarantine rooms and work closely with individuals in our schools to prepare for returning safely to the school, staff and students. We are continuing to help parents figure out timelines for when their children can return in person, learning safely and assisting with clarify continual changes, staff can provide consultation and education to families. As we gradually move into a routine school day, we continue to manage students' complex health conditions like seizures, diabetes, severe health plans. To teach the human growth and development curriculum for remote. With vision and hearing screenings as students return, contact parents for further evaluations as needed. Reflecting on my practice this past year, I feel I have helped to clarify uncertainty, calm fears. Also a rewarding.
I like your t-shirt there.
Nurses do rock.
Yes, they do.
I'm Trudy. I am the nurse at Heritage High School. And like Maggie shared, she shared all the things that we do on a regular basis, plus COVID. And I have to say that my day is consumed with a lot of parent contact, a lot of student contact. And she talked about the trends in healthcare trends and what we are seeing in the schools. What I'm seeing most of all is a lot of stress and anxiety. And I think that I'm working with the parents and the students, and a lot of the staff have come to me with stress and anxiety. And I enjoy working with them and helping find them resources. But what really, really helped me with my stress and anxiety surrounding all of this was finally getting the vaccine. That made such a difference to me. So I decided I was going to go work at one of the community vaccine sites. So if you guys come by there on Saturdays, you'll see us up there. There's a whole lot of school nurses that are up there now. We have the extra time. We can do it into the evening. So I had such a positive experience up at the Clark County Fairgrounds giving vaccines to our community. And it's giving the vaccines to our community that is allowing us to come back to normal, whatever our normal is going to be. So just to let you know, a lot of your school nurses, your nurses are up at the vaccine site helping out our community to get our kids and our families back into school. One more plug, if you're still on the fence or you just haven't had time, Saturday, you don't even need an appointment. Just show up at the fairgrounds. No corn dogs, sorry. So we do thank you for recognizing us. This has been a most challenging year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say real quickly, from the beginning, I remember last spring when there were requests for our school nurses to be available to work with Clark County Health, the nurses stepped up and did that. And as we went through, when the vaccinations were first coming out, the districts were working pretty hard to try to set up vaccination clinics, and the school nurses were all volunteering their work into the evenings to try to help make that happen. So there isn't any question that you've stepped up and done everything you possibly can to try to help our return to school as rapidly and as normally as possible. And I think have to mention Holly too, as a school nurse and as the manager of the nursing services program, who again, from the beginning was right there every step of the way, represented the district with Dr. Melnick and the County Department of Health meetings, interpreting all these guidelines. I mean, the guidelines have changed literally every month, it feels like, and then having to work through how that impacts our school district, and at all times keeping staff and students safe, but also not inflaming the fears of people within our buildings, and trying to work within the system to give opportunities to kids to do things. I mean, So I think we have to thank all our nurses, and we absolutely have to thank Holly for how wonderful a job she's done, not just in this situation, but in the measles situation. She's just been a tremendous leader for our nursing services program since she started. So thank you.
Definitely handling crises.
Come back here, Holly.
Yeah, I probably run up with her.
Come on back.
We have our shots.
Are you vaccinated?
Yes, I am. But she's a nurse as well.
Not smiling.
I'm. For everything you've done.
Raise your hand.
Eyes.
You got it. That's
And
good.
as if we hadn't had enough appreciation, we have some recognition for, and Clarissa Hightower will come up and we will have a proclamation regarding Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Thank you. So in honor of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we'd like to acknowledge, honor, and highlight our amazing Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander staff, students, parents, and community members, especially now as members of the AANHPI communities face increased hate-related incidents. We must show appreciation and value for those outstanding contributions of the AANHPI communities and how they continue to make our schools and our society better. With such a rich and varied cultures, our Asian and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities bring a wealth of knowledge and experiences to our district that adds immense value to our Evergreen community and beyond. National contributions like those of Indian American Ajay Bhatt, who gave us the Universal Serial Bus, better known as the USB, Hawaiian-born Haunani K. Trask, who was an educator and activist for preserving Native Hawaiian culture, and Japanese-American Hisai Yamamoto, an acclaimed short story writer who explored topics such as racism and immigrant disconnect. All help to advance and improve our country. In our own local community, we have outstanding AANHPI contributors like administrators Bill Oman, Lauren Bradley, Kia Masunaga, and Fu Dao, who work tirelessly to create school environments that foster growth, inclusivity, and equity. Security staff like Erin Pelanihi and parent liaison Angela Williams have devoted their lives to supporting students and families inside and outside of our schools, as well as Den Tran, the district manager for Chartwells, who makes sure that our students, as well as our board and this evening, has delicious and nutritious food to eat. From building our nation's railroads to holding one of our nation's highest offices, Asian Americans and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders help our community and our country thrive. Please join me in celebrating and honoring these invaluable community members and their outstanding contributions. Thank you.
I'd also like to add to your list, a former board member here in Evergreen, Todd Uzaria, who in his own way, as a local community member that was very involved. I mean, he has a podcast called the Money Jar. And Rob would have to say what it is, but he was instrumental in the invention of something in technology that was supposedly quite a feat, but I'm not a technology girl, so I can't tell you. Had something to
You know,
do.
the honest truth is, he and I never talked about that.
Oh, do you know what
Wasn't
it
it?
was?
I think it was a projector, something because he worked for Infocus, didn't he?
I
He
thought
was an amazing guy.
he really was, and he was quite well known within his. He is. Yes, he
No,
is.
he was an amazing guy.
He is an amazing guy. He contributed a lot to this community, quite an outstanding musician, and still plays to further his culture, Japanese culture, and by music throughout not only here locally, but throughout the nation and the world. So anyway, we miss him. He was a great board member, and so wanted to acknowledge him.
Yeah, he is a
today.
great guy.
He really is. He is.
Yeah. His mini Doka swing band keeps the story of the internship canceled.
Yes.
And it's going into its next generation. I think it's going strong. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, had to add that. Thank you, Clarissa, for bringing us that nice acknowledgement.
Thank you for the tribute like this.
I will get into some just regular old business. First up was I would like to receive a motion for the board's consent agenda.
Move to approve the board's consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Our board consent agenda has been approved. Next up is the superintendent consent agenda. Again, may I have a motion for approval of the superintendent consent agenda?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hey, good. We do have a matter reserved for board action. This has to do with the student transportation allocation formula position proposal. I'm going to turn this over to Rob to talk about, and you should have a copy of the document.
Okay.
So, Rob?
Yeah, it's not titled. At the top of it says current position SLP. Looking at WASDA's, it's the School Directors Association's legislative position on transportation funding, which was first adopted a little over 20 years ago. I was asked by school district staff and our lobbyists to take some draft language and propose on behalf of the school district an update to that position so that it'll align with the legislative development work that Representative Stonier and some others, Mike and some others are working on. I understand our consultant doesn't wish to be named or included in the fame, so we're leaving him out. But it has to do with sponsoring a change in WASDA's position. So the wording that you see before you could change, and what I'm seeking there is a vote to use Evergreen's name and submit this on behalf of our board. And I'll give you the motion for that right now.
Okay. Have a motion to
So moved.
approve the proposed update to the transportation funding legislative position.
Mhm.
And I would like to call for any discussion on this matter.
I can answer any questions if you've got any questions.
It's really a push to get away from ridership counts and to recommend actual costs of transportation operations.
the work that's going in is kind of looking across the country at different ways state fund transportation. And then coming up with a system that is better served in our district, not in our district, well, in our state. The current formula, it's not real clear exactly how the calculations go into it. And so it's trying to make it more transparent and more understandable and predictable as well. So.
Questions? Okay, and I'll take a
Second.
Any opposed? So you
Good.
can move forward with that to,
I'll submit the
Wasp,
position, and the legislative committee has modifications to propose. We can discuss that at a later time.
okay, thank you for your work on that, Rob. Okay, next up, we have a superintendent report, Mr. Merlino.
Yes,
Sure
thank
We have
you.
plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I primarily am going to talk about return to school. I'm going to talk about returning to school in the fall and some of the conversations and thoughts that went into this spring, as well as what went into what's happening as far as the fall. And then we've had a lot of questions that have come to the board, myself, around the decision, and then some specific questions about next year particularly. And so I'm going to try to answer those questions throughout the conversation that I'm going to start with. The first thing I want to say is, as everybody talked about, this has been a very challenging year. Very clearly, it's been a challenging year. And I didn't have an opportunity to thank the teachers that are here for Teachers Appreciation Week, and the teachers in the district. Obviously, it's been challenging for students, it's been challenging for families, it's been challenging for our teachers, for our classified staff across the board. This is kind of one that just never seems to have ended. And when you think that the light is at the end of the tunnel, the light just gets a little brighter, but it doesn't quite get as bright as you thought it might have. So I just, first of all, want to say thank you to the families, to the students, to our staff that have really endured something I don't think that anybody ever would have considered would have happened to us. One of the things I want to right from the beginning say is when we came out with the district letter to our families, as well as sit down with the superintendent, I stated in that we were coming back in the fall, that we would be coming back in the fall 5 days a week. And so I think that there's still some question about that out there from parents, and have heard some conversations and questions about that. But we've been, I think, pretty clear from the beginning that I think barring some, and it's hard to say unforeseen because it seems like everything we deal with is unforeseen, but I don't really see what that would be as we continue to have vaccinations increase, and we're seeing kind of cases plateau now, and very likely will start returning and dropping again. The science is becoming more familiar to the world and to the country. But I'm very confident that we will be back. I got an email from a student this week at Union asking about, please, can I make some announcement about returning to school on August 31st, 2021, because I want to be in school on August 31st, 2021. And I responded to him that we fully expect to be in school 5 days a week when we come back in the fall. Now, as part of that, I think the thing that is unknown is what are the conditions going to be when we come back in the fall. But what we've been doing in the district is basically charged all of our buildings to come up with individual building plans by the end of this month, which they're already working on. They've been working on these kind of ongoing throughout the year, but in the existing, with the guidelines we have in place right now, one of the things that I had said was there was a lot that went into trying to return our students to school 4 or 5 days a week this spring. And it was going to be a lot of work that we went through in a very short period of time for a pretty short end of the year. And for us, it made sense to spend a little more time on the planning so that when we come back in the fall, we don't come back with the chaos that I honestly think that is occurring throughout the region and probably throughout the state. When I'm going to talk through some of the things that we're addressing as we think about the fall. And these are the things that we would have been working through in a much shorter period of time for a 6-week period. One of the things also, and I just acknowledge it right up front, is that when we come back to school in the fall, we're operating under our collective bargaining agreements with all of our labor partners. That's with the teachers, that's with our classified groups. This year, we've operated under an MOU that we bargained on a couple different occasions, specifically to deal with safety issues and make sure that we were in a position to address all of the safety needs that we had. So when we come back in the fall, that is a condition that's different than what we're working under right now. We will come back. Not only are our buildings working out their building plans, we will on the 25th have a presentation to the board on a return to school plan, and then have a resolution adopted by the board, which we are required to do from OSPI as we we'll comply with that, and we'll have that for you in 2 weeks. I want to talk through some of the challenges that we are currently working on and resolving as we think about coming back under the existing situation we have right now, in if that's the case. The hope is that the conditions relax when we come back in the fall. It's a different set of guidelines, but we can't be sure that that's the case. So we have to be ready for the guidelines we're operating under now in the fall. So what each building is doing right now is going classroom by classroom and identifying, that we know what the sizes of the classrooms are, but we have to consider the furniture in each one of these classrooms. So depending on where they have individual desks, you have small tables, and some of them you have larger tables. That limits the number of students that you can have in a building, in a classroom, even at the 3 feet socially distanced amount. So we have the inventory of all the classrooms, obviously, but we don't have the inventory of the furniture in every one of these classrooms. So part of it is identifying where do we need to maybe switch out furniture? Where are we fine with the furniture? What furniture might we need to buy? And then not only that, in some classes where we have excess furniture, where do we store the furniture? Because we not only have to think about bringing in furniture, we have to think about where's it going to go. So it's securing locations for that storage as well. I think the biggest issue that we faced has been the CDC guidelines that say you can be within 6 feet, but you can't be within 6 feet if you are during mealtime or if you've got your masks off. So when you think about that, right now we've got elementary students eating in their classrooms at 6 feet social distancing. We've got middle schools and high schools in cafeterias, in lower gyms, in upper gyms, kind of throughout the building, spaced 6 feet apart. The hope was that that was going to be, the 3 feet would remain for the new guidelines would have 3 feet. So what we're doing now is considering how many lunches does it require in a building if you have the 6 feet social distancing? What other areas of a building can you expand to run your lunch? So if I'm in a middle school in particular, we were at Covington the other day. One of our teachers here is from Covington. They're in the small gym, they're in the cafeteria. They would need to take over the large gym. And then by doing that, now you've completely changed the schedule with respect to PE and access to the gym for kids to participate in PE. So basically what we're doing right now is securing tents for every one of our schools and having those on hand so that when we open in the fall, if the guidelines are the guidelines that we have right now, that we've got tents outside of cafeterias at pretty much every one of our schools to be able to address that. Learning from folks like Jay and Holly and the Department of Health in terms of with those tents, do the sides need to be rolled up? How do we allowing for air? And then even considering if this lasts even deeper into the year, how do we heat those tents if we start to get into November and we start to get in December? Because honestly, I think a lot of us felt like this was going to be done a long time ago, and it just drags on and on and on. So we have to be ready just in case we're in the same situation we're in today, a year from now, is my perspective on that. All of those things, as well as the fact that if you've got kids all over a building, now you've got supervision issues for kids all over a building. And we don't employ the classified staff that allows for supervision, or even the certificated staff that allows for supervision outside at lunch, in cafeterias, in gyms. So that's another issue that we needed to address. We needed additional staff. And again, speaking honestly, this spring when we brought kids back in January, because of the financial situation that we were facing, as all districts in the state honestly have been facing with respect to the budget reductions, because enrollment had declined as significantly as it had, a number of our staff were furloughed. And in those furloughs, they waited to be called back. When we went to call them back, not all of them came back. And so our staffing, even this spring, has been a challenge with the initial staffing that we would typically have in a school. So the idea of now we need additional supervision when we're having a hard time staffing the positions that we have at the present time is an issue. So part of these plans would also be not only staff at mealtime, but recess. Now you've got half the kids in an elementary school going out to recess. Now you've got all the kids going out, and the recesses have to be social distanced and building schedules around that. So in addition to everything else, we'd have to make sure that we had the staff, as well as then we have to rebuild the schedules to accommodate. These are things that we will have in place 100%, but they're things that we're working through right now. Not only, I mentioned mealtime, I mentioned recess, but also when students arrive at school, there's attestations that we're working where we have to have the parents acknowledge if they haven't been online and done the work that they need to do, staff to work through that process as well. At the same time that we're struggling to bring in classified staff, we've also got to bring in certificated staff. So when you're thinking about a middle school or a high school that might have class sizes of 30, the size, the number of kids that you might be able to bring into that same classroom could be a lower number than that based upon the logistics of the actual classroom. Example would be Covington, they believe the number, let's say, is 26, 28, somewhere in that range. Chehalia, middle school, you'd think they're all the same. Well, Chehalia's got built-in teacher desks at the front of the class that you can't just move them out of the way. So not only do we need to deal with thinking about the number of kids that can get in the building, now at Chehalia, we need to remove these things from the classroom to allow for more space so that we can have the numbers of kids in that classroom that follow the safety guidelines. And in a short period of time, we're struggling to find, again, substitutes in our classrooms on a literally almost a daily basis. And so, again, this gives us more time to make sure we've got the staff that we need to have. We've done the planning. We've got the class sizes built to the levels that follow the safety guidelines, and that we can actually find the staff to staff those buildings. PE music curriculum. One of the things that's quite ironic is if you're in music, you cannot be within 6 feet of each other if you're singing or if you're playing a musical instrument. Again, that's going to seriously reduce the number of kids that you have available. So you're either going to change the curriculum and say we're no longer singing in choir, or we're singing outside, or we're not playing instruments because of the spacing issues that we have to deal with. PE, same thing. If you're elevating your heart rate or you're exerting energy, you need to have your mask on and you need to remain at 6 feet distance. So some of these things are also frustrations just with the guidelines. And again, I'm being honest. We have football playing, we have basketball games. We're even going to start being able to wrestle. But in a PE class in a middle school or an elementary school or a high school, if they're 6 feet apart from each other and they start breathing heavier, we need to make sure that they're maintaining the guidelines. It does not make sense, but these are the things that we work with. I'm speaking for myself when I say it. Others might think this makes complete sense, but when you're trying to make these things work, it's a challenge. The current issue districts are facing right now, I'm on calls every week, and I've been on calls every week for a year with superintendents in the area, Dr. Melnick. The CDC guidelines say that you can be within 6 feet in a classroom, but if you are within 6 feet and someone tests positive, anybody within 6 feet has to be quarantined. So you can be in a classroom at 3 feet, but if somebody comes in from outside and tests positive, anyone that's within the 6 feet barrier goes out in quarantine. So we see a lot of, I'm hearing, the frustration is that what we've seen from the beginning is we have not really seen transmission in the schools. We've been great at following the guidelines from the work of our teachers, our families, our students do an amazing job wearing the masks, following the protocols. But we haven't seen transmission within the buildings. However, we still have to follow the guidelines that exist. So what I'm hearing this week is a lot of effort in Clark County to try to identify how many kids are we quarantining, let's say in a school district in any particular week. How many are we quarantining? And then how many has there actually been spread within that? Was there spread that came out of it? And so you're talking about hundreds of students being quarantined. And I don't know of other than maybe one case where there's been spread within a building, not in Evergreen, but in another district. So we're trying to gather that information to influence the decision makers in Olympia and provide that information. What I hear is we've got administrators spending all their time contact tracing in those districts, school nurses, Holly staff, spending a lot of time on that. So that's another one that hopefully they get worked out in the meantime. And I mentioned the bargaining agreement. So these are, basically if I walk through some of the other things that buildings are putting in their plans or that they have to think about, hallway plans, which they've been all along, but now you've got the full school rather than half the school. What are the directions? How are we working within the hallway? Hand washing, screenings, the spots in the, I mean, it's just kind of if we need plexiglass in certain areas. So basically, all of this work will be done by the end of the month and then communicated with our families so that they understand that yes, you are coming back in the fall 5 days a week, and this is what we've put in place to make that happen, and that's for our staff. And I know we've worked throughout the year with Bill Bevel and EEA in working through issues, and we will continue to do that. Janae has been a significant part of that, and others, and we will continue to do that, and we'll have those conversations. But that is a difference, is that we have the bargaining agreement in place for next fall. Now, I will say a few other things. One thing that we had talked about when we moved forward this year, we talked about while we weren't bringing kids back, we were going to bring more kids back through the student engagement teams. So the student engagement teams, if you recall, we initiated last summer, and they're comprised of teachers, counselors, deans in some buildings, athletic coordinators in some buildings, building administration. And that team is looking through indicators for students that are struggling with attendance, they're struggling with their grades, they're struggling with engagement. And they have been from the beginning up until the point that we got kids back in hybrid, bringing kids in through these student engagement teams. What we talked about, that was one thing that was in the MOU that talked about student engagement team, bringing students back through the set process. So I asked Brian Grimstead to work with our buildings on the numbers of kids that we've got in. I think we started this last week. We've got over 2,000 kids now coming in, additional kids coming in through the student engagement teams. We put in place a process for parents to request to have their kids come in. The buildings will kind of match that with the criteria, which again are those things, grades, SEL issue, any number of, if there's a student that's struggling, they're identified. And so we're accommodating as many of those as we can. So while we're not here in building for 4 days a week, we do have kids coming 5 days a week because we even have staff on Wednesdays working with kids and bringing kids in. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I talked about the summer program, the summer school, what we were planning on doing to try to provide offerings for our students over the summer. ESSER funds specifically identified student learning recovery. I don't know how they called it, but the summer school, but it's not just summer school because it can be additional staff during the school year to reduce class size. It could be after school work during the summer on breaks. It's a pot of money that we have made available. So what we have done is we've got an elementary program, a middle school program, and a high school program. The elementary buildings have all identified kids that are struggling, similar to the SET process. And then we also sent out a link to our families to allow them the opportunity to register their student for summer school this summer. And the summer school is comprised of 2 weeks, starting the week of June 21st, 4 days a week in the mornings. And it's an academic work with these students. One of the issues is you've got to have kids signing up, which in the past has been a little more problematic. After they've been in school a whole year, not as many kids are that inclined to be interested in families. Also having the staff available to teach that. So we're fortunate to have, I think, well over 70 elementary teachers sign up. It's over 100 teachers total in the district. So I think we've got 4 elementary schools right now with 18 teachers at each of those. So we'll have over 1,000 kids identified. And we're continuing to work further to try to see if we can't identify some additional teachers to make sure that kids get as many opportunities as we possibly can make available for them. In all 3 elementary, middle, and high school, we'll have 2 weeks in June and then another 2 weeks in August that will be available for kids to come in to help with some of that loss. I personally want to just say, I'm proud of what we've done in the district. Honestly, I feel like while there's people frustrated, and I understand that, and I clearly understand that. If I have 2 little girls myself that are in elementary school, and I understand the impact on families, on what this has been like, no question about it. But I feel good about us having kindergartners in before any district in the area. I feel good about us having kids starting in the middle of January in the hybrid. I feel good that our system has done such a tremendous job of following the protocols. I feel proud of our nurses and our staff that are out there working to help folks get vaccinated. And I understand it's a personal choice, the vaccinations, and whether people want to move that forward or they don't want to move that forward. But I do believe that the higher the percentage gets, the case numbers likely will continue to decline. But I think we have to be prepared for the conditions we're in right now to be in place in the fall. And I feel real good about the work that's happening in the month of May so that we will be back in school 5 days a week in the fall. We've got kids and families and staff that have a lot of interest in being back. We've got facilities. We've been very successful. Sue Steinbrenner, our facilities executive director, in having amazing facilities ready for our kids when we come back in the fall, and new buildings opening up. Real excited about that as well. So this has been a very tough year. It's been a very tough year. And I'm looking forward to the day, hopefully soon, that we're all in here and the room isn't full, because when the room's full, usually that's not necessarily a good indicator, but that the room can be full and that we're here without masks if we choose not to have masks on. I know personally, one thing that's been positive is I've had a mask on for a year. I haven't been sick for a year. And I don't know that I've ever gone a year without having a cold or something else. So I think there'll probably be a lot of people that continue to wear masks when they're out in public. But I'm just looking forward to coming back in the fall after everybody's had a chance to kind of reset And that's some of the background around the fall and also kind of how we work through the spring. And I'm happy to answer any questions from anyone on the board. That's all really I have. This has kind of been what we've been doing for the last several weeks. And so there's other meetings I've been to and things like that. This is really, I wanted to spend my time talking about this tonight.
Thanks, Mike. That was a really good recap of where we started and where we are today. And I think that all of our goal has been to have our students in school. I mean, last year, I don't think that we, at the end of 2020, I don't think that we ever imagined that we wouldn't get kids back into class before the end of the school year. And then it continued. And all year that's been our focus, is to get kids in school, get them the support that they need. And you're right, we got kindergarten in first, we got elementary back. And things have been going well. I mean, I know that they could be better, and I know that every student is different, and we have to try to meet them where they're at, and we just have to keep working at it, to get better. And we've got some work to do to make sure that these kids are in a good place when we do get them back 5 days a week in the fall, because I think that has always been our goal, is to make sure that they're back in class every day starting in the fall. And we want to do it the right way. And we want to make sure that we're set up for success and that we don't go backwards, because Mike's right, we have heard some other districts that their kids were back in class for 2 or 3 days, and now they're out for 21 days because they have to be on quarantine. So and they're upset about that too. They finally got back in class and now they can't go at all. And so, I think we just have to make sure that we do things the right way and that we're set up for success. And how many days? It's 5 days a week for the summer program?
4 days a week.
4 days. And how many hours a day?
9 to 12.
9 to 12, okay. And the same kids will go for the 2 weeks in June and the 2 weeks in August?
I think that's
Is that how it
accurate. I know
works?
that they've identified kids. I think that's accurate if the students choose to do both. I mean, it's up to them to choose what they participate in.
And I've been really excited to see kids participate in things again. I think it's been fantastic. Kids get to play their sports, be involved in the activities. We've had kids doing activities from the very beginning and doing all, drama, choir, all those things, and they've been very creative in how they've gotten it done. And I do think that our kids are learning skills that they might not. It's all experience, right? Whatever you go through is an experience that you can learn and build from. So we're going to get our kids back on track.
Thank you so much for that. It was comprehensive and really helped me organize it in my thought. It's such a huge amount of work. We recognize that you and the others in the ASC and in the buildings have never worked harder to try and keep things together and keep a focus on the kids. That's my appreciation for them. So we just keep an eye on,
I just wanted to make a comment about how much I've appreciated everybody, the community, and because this has been, as we've talked about, a very trying time, but it also was a very confusing time for so many people. We get letters from staff, we get letters from the community, and we'll get one letter that says you need to do this, and then we get another letter that says do the complete opposite, and trying to kind of maneuver through the wants and desires of so many different people and their viewpoints about this sticky wicket. It's just like it almost felt sometimes that it was a no-win situation, and really with COVID it hasn't been a win. But I do think we will be stronger. We've come together as a team, and I think our community has some clarity about what's important. And we just meet one foot in front of the other and doing the right thing and just keeping everybody safe. but getting them back in school, because we've all, our discussions and anybody who's been at our board meetings or participated over the last year, we've been very concerned about the social emotional needs of our kids and what that looks like and how do we help support those kids and our families. It's just been so many things intertwined in the decision-making process, and the communication of it is very challenging. So I just appreciate that everybody has stepped up and parents are here to advocate for their kids, and that's exactly what they should be doing. And we appreciate it when we get the input. It has not been unheard or unread, depending on how people want to communicate with us. And it's been a heartbreak on a lot of decisions that we've had to make. I mean, none of this was easy, and several of us still have kids in school. Some of us don't, but we care about kids, and thinking about decisions that are really tough for so many different reasons have been agonizing sometimes. So I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness and participation through along the way. So anyway. Next up, we have a textbook. We have a couple of textbook adoptions. These adoptions have been through a workshop. They've been through a first reading, and now today it's time for us to make those adoptions. Separate adoptions, probably. Oh, okay. Okay, so the first one is our AP Spanish Literature. Does anybody in the audience have any questions regarding the AP Spanish Literature situation? Textbook
or situation.
It is a situation around here. Anybody on the board? Okay, then I'd like to have a motion to adopt.
I recommend we approve AP Spanish Literature for approval and adoption.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any? Hey. Okay, next up was the veterinary science, and I still have the book, just FYI.
We thought we're missing one.
I'll get it back to you. I've been plugging away. It's a lot to read in that book, but it's interesting to me.
Well, if you guys keep trying to practice or try, that may be a situation.
I have not done anything to treat my dog or the cat, but
No, the books aren't actually good for that.
yeah, but they are interesting, and I was really keen on the information. I think I just see this as being something that would be so interesting to a student to read about veterinary science, because so many of our kids really love animals, and even if you never want to go into that area, it's a neat way to study science in a way that feels very useful. And so anyway, have any questions or comments regarding the veterinary science adoption? Audience have any comments to do with that? Sir? They're
You're talking about something that was in the consent agenda? Yes. I think I see Ryan back there. I'm not sure who we buy these from.
This is Kim Burhow. I don't know. I didn't hear the question.
You're talking about on the agenda, it says sole source approval, declaration of single source of supply, American Reading Company.
Correct.
I don't, my guess is that's not who
No,
we're buying this from. No.
that's a separate purchase. not a textbook adoption. That would be materials and,
When it's connection to that when it's connected to the immersion program.
Ah.
Elementary materials for Spanish immersion. Yeah. Yes.
answer your question, sir. Okay.
You have to explain, if you have a sole source, you have to explain why they're a sole source. And I think Rob's saying it's tied to the dual language immersion.
Other questions? All right. So I'd like to have a motion for the textbook adoption of veterinary science 1 to 4.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Much. Next up is citizen comments. This is a time for citizens to address the board about anything that's not currently on the agenda, is not personnel or legal in nature. We ask that people keep their comments to 3 minutes. And for anyone who's not been to a board meeting, it's important for you to note that because this is an agenda item, this is not an agenda item where we've listed what the topics are going to be. The board is not able to engage in any kind of back and forth, but we can ask clarifying questions if you bring something forward that we need some more clarity on. And then we can have someone follow up afterwards. So we have a list of people who've signed up. The first person is Kathy Erdahl. Did I say that right? Are you here, Kathy? Great. And we need to have your address for the record.
It's 24500 Northeast 128th. Now, my husband and I are proud grandparents of 6 grandchildren, and 3 of them are enrolled in the Evergreen School District. Initially, I want to talk to someone at the district about why grandparents could get tickets to see their high school basketball. If the grandparents had received COVID shots, if they were distanced in the mask, wanted to go see our grandson play basketball. In my quest to find the right person to talk to about the basketball situation, I took to the Evergreen School District site online. I saw a letter from the superintendent dated April 21st, 2021. How challenging it was to implement the guidance from the CDC. Revised rules were described as challenging to implement in the 30 without significant and potentially disruptive changes to student operations, hence no full-time in-person education. I can take this off. I've had my COVID shot and I'm more than 6 feet away and it's difficult.
I think you have to leave it on. And I
Put
agree.
down a little like this. Okay.
Oh, it's mad.
It is difficult to talk. I agree with you.
Say what?
I said I agree with you. It is difficult to talk.
Yeah, especially if you're not used to this.
We're hearing you though, good. We're
Oh,
doing
good.
Hearing you well. You're doing good.
Okay.
Just fine.
Then I stumbled across the district student progress report, which reports how much are students learning in the district compared to the rest of the state.
turn that this way so the board can see that, please? Thank you.
And what I found out, the results were described as worrisome, a worrisome sign. Evergreen School District has a large number of schools who are making less academic progress than their peers in other schools in the state. They indicated that 50% of the schools in the Evergreen School District were rated below average, while the state average was 29%. 29% of the district schools were rated average. The state average was 36%, and 14% of the schools were rated above average when the state average was 34%.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask for you to up because we've reached your have a list of people who want to speak tonight.
Well, given what I'd like to say is that if the school district was a public company and these results were reported to the stockholders, I think the stockholders would be selling their shares and looking to move their money to other companies that will produce better results. And I have a stake in this too, because the largest distribution of my property taxes are going to the schools. And given the results that I looked online, I felt that as soon as the schools closed down, that the school board and the school superintendent would be working right from the beginning, way back in March 17th of 2020, to get those students back to school as soon as possible. And I feel like somebody's failing our students. Other districts have opened 5 days a week for in-person teaching. And my big question before I came here, I know there's a lot of things that you've looked into. Why hadn't Evergreen School District done that? I know that students have been impacted socially, emotionally, and educationally, and are falling behind not only statewide, but nationally and internationally. And I think every student is going to need some kind of help. And I would like to say that we should put the welfare of our students first and get them back to school 5 days a week as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Next up, we have Anna Smith. No. Oh, okay.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Dear school board members and Superintendent Merlino, I'm a mother of 2 children in the district. I want to start by thanking you and the educators in Evergreen for your work. This past year has been unlike any other, and there have been many obstacles to navigate. I also want to thank the school nurses for volunteering and distributing vaccines and doing their part to return to in-person. With that said, I think we've all seen this past year how essential schools are. They provide not only academic instructions, but also social and emotional skills, physical speech, and mental health therapy. OSPI states that attendance is a critical building block for student learning. If students are not present, they cannot engage in learning. Students that miss just 2 days a month for any reason are more likely to not read at a grade level and more likely not to graduate. We are currently missing 12 to 15 days of in-person learning per month. According to OSPI, the attendance rate for middle school students is down 60% across the state. In the governor's emergency proclamation, he states that the closure of schools had negatively affected our children's education and mental well-being. It is feared that the lack of in-person learning and other school-based support may result in gaps in students' learning and development that may last a lifetime, including the state's ability to have enough skilled workers in the future. I was disappointed to hear that Evergreen was one out of 9 school districts in the Greater Vancouver area that did not resume more in-person learning after the revised guidelines. As a mother, it is hard to sit by and watch honor students failing classes, feeling so desperate that they have started cutting themselves. I am encouraged to hear that you have some plans in place for returning full-time in the fall. I would highly encourage you to be more transparent with parents on what you're working on. As long as our children are not back in person learning, none of us are doing enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your input. Next up, we have Dion Bird. Hi.
Right. So I want to talk a lot about transparency because this was like the most information I've received. And it was really good. I really appreciate your comments. I think, I've heard from a lot of people. There's a woman that I talked to. She's like, I pulled my 4th grader and my 10th grader after Christmas and placed them in private school. My daughter's anxiety and depression became too much. My son has ADHD and a 504 plan. However, the school and could not or would not meet his needs with online learning. Like, I hope to have them back in the public school next year if it's full-time in person. She has a discretionary income that she can do that. Most people in our district probably do not have that kind of discretionary income to send their child to a private institution for education. Another parent said, so I didn't respond to you right away because honestly, I wasn't sure how to say it. But what is important to me is the emotional social aspect that is being overlooked. For example, the superintendent said you could fill out a request to have your child attend 4 days. But she's like, it was explained to me. This is for children who are struggling to retain what they're learning. So my child would not be approved. I didn't even try. However, if she continues to have the level of anxiety she has, she will be behind her peers. All children need consistency. That the 2 days a week does not offer that when it's always changing. 2 regular days. So she's a Tuesday, Friday, you can tell by what she says. 2 regular days, 1 regular day, 1 early release, 1 day at no school, and the other. She's like, I can't even keep up with it, and I'm an adult. She's like, I have no idea. She said our children's mental health needs to be just as important or more important than the education. And she just said, I'm really glad that I get the chance to be heard. And I think the biggest thing for me in this whole process is that what you know isn't getting to what we don't know. Not getting there. So I don't know if that's a communication issue. I don't know if it's a transparency issue. I don't know if it's an understanding issue, but I don't think it's an understanding issue because I understand a lot of things in my life. But I believe that we have to do something that gets the message all the way to everyone. I felt pretty good about things when there were some surveys asking what we wanted, what we needed. That was good. But there was no surveys about this return or not return. And I look at that and I go, it kind of makes me feel like no one wanted to know. And I don't know if that's the case. The last thing is, my 3rd grader came home yesterday and he said, I got some of my classmates back. He was so excited. And I responded that was really great. He was super excited about it. And he's like, well, I'm going to go to school on Tuesday then. He's Monday, Thursday. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. And he's like, why? Why can't I? If they can. I said, well, some kids need more help than you. And he said, but I do need help. And he does. Emotionally, he's had a tough year. He's only 9. He doesn't understand this. And he needs an in-person education. And he gets to go 8 days a month. That's not enough academically. Thanks for your time. I just think that most parents, that was the most important thing, getting kids back to school. That is the most important thing. And I think a lot of things should have happened that didn't happen.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming tonight. Next up is Raphael Perez. Barb.
Superintendent, thanks for those remarks early on. I hadn't heard any of that, much like many of the parents here, and many of the parents are online. But I'm here because, quite frankly, you owe the public answers. This school board owes the public answers. And not just for those of us that are in this room, those of us that are outside chanting, I don't know if you can hear them, those that are online, but for all the families, las familias hispanas, Ruski Semya, Russian families, we all need this information. So how did I get here tonight? And how did I get to be part of the group that was able to come up and speak? Well, I was invited and joined an online forum for concerned parents to find out why EPS is not back in a full 5-time-day-a-week program. When I asked why the other schools or why we were behind the other day schools, I was given responses or saw responses that were like, well, there are regulations. There are equal votes to the opposite. We can't just go back to the status quo. This is impacting the impacted. And then my favorite is, we can hope for the fall. Well, that's when I knew I had to come here and speak. Hope isn't a strategy or a plan. Other school districts have given families the choice of full in-person education classes or remote learning. I have suggested on the online forums that in the daily attestation, that we ask one simple question. If school offered a full 5-day schedule, would you return or stay remote? If you get 100% answers? Probably not. But would you get a lot more data to be able to find out what families want? And I think you owe that to us. But I guess I say that because we know that I haven't been asked that question. I don't think any of the parents here or parents online have been asked, what is it that you want? The contract signed last summer allows teachers to continue working from home as long as there are no students in their classrooms. The memorandum of understanding from January this year also states that no school should have more than 15% of their student population reporting for SET team instruction on a daily basis, not including IEP or alternatives. So we're booked at 15% max, it seems like, based on that memorandum of understanding. I don't remember parents being part of that understanding. And obviously by the folks who are having issues, the students who are having issues, that's not our understanding of the way things should be going. So who gets to decide when students come back? The SET. Who makes up the SET? This is the first time I've heard of folks who are on the SET. How many parents were notified of this process prior to the MOU? Probably none. Other states like Florida, Utah, Tennessee have gone back to full 5 times a day and are moving to remove the mask mandate for students. We will take this one step at a time and get our students back, but the time to talk about masks is coming too. And picking students to return based on buzzwords is the furthest you can get from equality, which is what we all should be striving for at home and in school. Guardians and parents need to have the choice, and without providing that option, you are not only taking away our choice, but denying us our rights. 14th Amendment protects a parent's right to direct the educational upbringing of their child. And in other words, it is our right and your obligation. Perhaps we parents have coasted along for too long on the sidelines. And with that, you have grown comfortable in your roles and a lack of transparency and accountability. That time has come to live up the declarations and beliefs on your website and create that partnership. And we parents need to do our part too. Serve on a public board, and as the name states, you work for the public and not the Evergreen Education Association. If that statement rubs you the wrong way, at least you have a choice in the situation. Stay, get out of your comfort zone, and live up to your declaration and beliefs, or find something else to do. Think about it, and if you're having a hard time deciding, we, the voting public, are here to help. Pasiva, gracias, and thank you.
Throughout this year, I'm just asking a clarifying question. Have you had the opportunity to attend, to participate in the board meetings online? Because of course, for a long time, we weren't able to meet, even us, in person. But we've always had our meetings be open, and we've always had, when we've had these discussions, we always have an opportunity for public input on, as we're making these decisions. Is that something that you were able to participate in? And is that, I'm just wondering if we need to do a better job of advertising and putting out there in our social media and because they're public in the news. You know, the Columbian posts are, and they're on our website.
Sure.
Because I'm hearing from parents a lot about not knowing what's going on, and we really want people to feel free to attend our board meetings, and to participate in that open process. So,
Well, so yes, I guess I could have gone on. The website itself is a little difficult to navigate. I work in software, so I understand usability and adoption, and it's whoever's doing it needs to do something a little different.
Okay.
But based on your agenda, the superintendent gave some very great points today. However, it's not on the point of the agenda where we can have public comment. So we come and we listen, we write down notes. 2 weeks of lives happen for both you and us, and then we maybe don't make the next meeting, and then may not be open for public comment in the next meeting. So how do we do that? We send you an email privately, we get a response privately. You're a public body. I need to send my question to you publicly, and I need to get a public answer back.
all right, thank you. I appreciate that input. Thank
All right,
you
thank you.
so much. Next up, we have Bill Bevel, the EEA president.
Bill Bevel, 1004 Northwest 43rd Street. And I am the president of the Evergreen Education Association. I wanted to talk tonight mainly around the idea of what we're doing to collaborate with the school district. We tend to, in bargaining for member rights, we tend to sometimes have to take a very adversarial position. From the outside, I know that it's very hard to understand how that has been different during this process. From somebody outside of the system, it would be hard to know. But some of the things I think it's important to know is that, you know, we have been here for our students the whole time. Knowing that special education, kindergarten, our Hollingsworth Academy, our transition programs, we're back and in person immediately from being in the school year. And that was a hard decision to make because that didn't affect all of the members the same way. We've always on both sides first stipulated that we're going to follow the science and we're going to follow the recommendations of the Clark County Health Department and make sure that one of the things is this is a 100-year pandemic. We only learn things as they come and as science proves that things are safe. And so we had to follow those protocols because the number one job is that we, as a teacher, you know, when you walk into a classroom, that your first number one job is to keep those kids safe during the time that you supervise them. And teachers were pushing back for student safety as well as our own. I can already tell I'm running out of time here, but I think one of the things I just want to sum up and say is that I want to follow the same model of the most successful schools in the district. That in those schools where we had zero, well, actually all of the schools, we had zero school transmission. But in those schools that worked most successfully, they worked collaboratively. They put aside their differences and they said, look, we got to make this school safe for kids. And we're going to make sure that every kid that comes in here is going to get the best learning possible. You want to put us at home in front of a computer and we have to do it remotely, we'll do that. You want to bring us back in to teach hybrid 2 days and 2 days? That's hard. And creating on-demand lessons is really, you want to talk about mental health, it's really affected the mental health of my teachers. I hear from them all the time. That's been very difficult. We want to be back. And I think it's important to recognize that whether teachers were rushing to get back to in-person learning or they were actually pushing back for remote learning, both sides of those were doing it for student safety. It's what they believe was safest for students. At no time were they concerned about, well, there was some concern about their own personal safety, but the most important thing is they wanted to make sure that our schools were safe for everybody that attends those schools. And there was no need to prioritize kids' lives over teachers' lives or anyone else's. All of our lives were very important to make sure that we remain safe. And okay, my time's up, but the most important thing is that we are committed to make sure that we are not a barrier to returning in the fall, as long as we can keep our kids safe along the way.
Bill?
Thank you, she said. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, sorry. Okay, next up, we have Adam Moore, and I believe he's online. Okay. Adam, are you with us?
I'm here. How can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. I struggle to find the right tone when addressing the board. I realize you guys all sacrifice a tremendous amount of time and effort in your duty, public service. And I'm not going to question your good intentions, but my gripe is with the results. And let me tell you how this meeting has made me feel. Maybe if the school district had put the same amount of effort into attaboys, awards, resolutions, and recognitions to opening schools, we might have the logistics of full-time school worked out by now. My daughter's in 3rd grade and is only receiving 2-day-a-week education. This, of course, is called hybrid, but there's no teacher interaction, even online, on the days she's not at school. She's not allowed to join online class on her off days. And this is obviously terrible, and I'd be shocked if this is acceptable to any of you. Further, I hope the board is anticipating that teachers in their union will seek to continue this next fall, as there's going to be new COVID variants and people that refuse to get vaccinated. So what is the school board preparing as a solution now, so we're not acting surprised when the union wants to continue this inadequate schedule come fall? Maybe we could have some common sense solutions. Maybe the children and teachers who do not wish to meet in person can remain fully online. The children and teachers that are comfortable could meet in person 5 days a week. I appreciate good teachers and know their hearts are in the right place, but they have their union to represent their best interests. The parents, children, and community interests should be represented by the school board. It seems the school board is more interested in making nice with the teachers union than fighting for the best outcome for the kids. Evergreen School District is the only district who is not providing full-time in-person schooling in Clark County. Why? What has gone wrong? Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you. But tonight. Next, we have Margaret Hunter. Margaret here? Oh, there you are.
Oh, it would have been nice if you yielded 30 seconds to me. My name is Margaret Hunter. I live at 3205 Northeast 129th Avenue, and I teach art at Covington Middle School. First, I'd like to say good evening and thank you for being here and hearing concerns and taking your time to be here, as well as the Evergreen Public Schools stakeholders, not just the school board. I want to say 2 things this evening. The first thing is to thank the school board and the district for the continued support in the visual arts programs. It's been really obvious this year, especially for kids who have high skills, talents, and interests, that kids need creative arts in schools. The second thing I'm here for is we've been asked a lot this year, particularly because of all of the equity work we're doing district-wide, to think about what we can do in our classrooms to create more equity for our students. It was obvious with our art team crew, not just on the overhaul of our programs and accommodating for some blended learning in a 6-period day, but the everlasting art fee for visual arts classes. I have a lot of things that I'm not going to talk about, but they are district policies, union CBAs that state that the visual arts classes will be funded. And they're not. They're funded by families and students still. I believe my building budget is about $250, which I use to buy magazines that stay in my classroom. So I have appropriate reading levels for my kids. This year, I was really excited to hear our districts in talking about our budget right now and trying to find some monies that come out to us. We currently get fine arts monies in our secondary schools. And what would happen to the music programs would be devastating if we use that money to also fund our programs for the visual arts. It cannot be afforded. When I started in the district, I was asked, do you want to take a piece of the fine arts money that comes to the building, or would you like to charge your students fees? When I asked how much money I would get per student if I used the building budget, it was like $1.50 a kid. I didn't see myself running 12 weeks of art for $1.50 a kid. So I'll just get straight to that 45 seconds that we have left. The problem is that our visual fine arts classes in secondary schools are not in compliance with either the district policies or the current collective bargaining agreement. What the intent is that we just want to fund classes and give opportunities to kids. But the impact is quite a bigger structure. In not just talking with parents, but also coworkers and staff. Things like this are said in meetings. I feel like a money stalker of my students and their parents, embarrassing my students to constantly ask them if they've paid their fee so I can cross their name off of my list. We are the only electives charging fees in the district now. Why? That's asked by a lot of parents. Music and performance budget are taken, and we don't want to devastate our coworkers' programs and take opportunities from those students in that art. It's an extra workload to track almost 500 kids and whether or not they've taken care of their $10. I am always embarrassed when I have to call parents to discuss this, and I know that they are often more embarrassed when they have to call me to discuss it. I have students this year not choosing paint or clay because they don't want to pay the fee with only 6 more weeks in-person learning. So in support of the district talks this year, I'm really hoping on behalf of the visual arts programs and all of our students and families that we can eliminate this fee for students and make our class just as equitable as all of the other classes in the district. Thank you.
Margaret, quick question. What is the fee that you're charging right now to the families?
Well, middle schools charge $10, and then high schools are kind of different depending on what class, from what I understand.
Okay.
But I know Bill Oman has been collecting some information with our district's art manager. And so that's how we're seeing how different it is at every school.
Okay.
So it's sort of different depending on what class you're working with.
All right, that's great. Thank you
Thanks.
for that information. Okay, next up we have Melanie Gabriel and also online. Oh, Melanie, you're on via phone, push 9. Got her answer. Okay. All right. Okay, that is the list of public comments. Next up, have board comments. Time for the board to, things not on the agenda. I think have anything, Rachel? Bob?
No, I don't.
Just one thing, the WASDA Region 6 meeting is on May 26th. It's in the evening, it's virtual. Would love it if you would all attend, since it's my first one that I'll be facilitating. And I know that one of the main topics that evening will be the back to school plans for the fall and a lot of the learning recovery plans. And so we'll have a chance to collaborate with our neighboring districts, not only, just in this county, but all the way up the coast and the Highway 14 all the way down, like I think, yeah, ESD 112, yeah. May 26th, I think it starts at 6 in the evening, but I think you still have to register, so maybe we can do that through Lori.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The Equity Conference is also sometime between now and then, and I don't know if any of us have signed up for that. I haven't. You are? Okay. And then I got a call from the executive director of Wasp the other day, and this is something I probably could have front loaded for you, but he asked if, each Thursday they have the COVID call. They don't call it that anymore. They call it like a networking call. Yeah, thank you. And called me and wondered if there have been districts who have been presenting some of the innovations and ideas that they've used to reach students during the pandemic. He wondered if Evergreen had something to add and is willing to hold up a slot. I thought while I was talking to him of the equity work that we'd begun to do, the libraries and the way Clarissa's coordinated us and gotten our training might be a good topic to cover. But it's really up to the superintendent and his staff in coordination with you as the chair to choose something and then. Oh, you had an idea? Yeah. To choose something and then present it. In a PowerPoint, he tells me it's not required.
So they're looking for like staff innovation things that they've done, like online. Because I was thinking about that teacher at Frontier that did the science and how everything was remote and he had the kids come on site and do kind
With
of the
that,
scavenger
right,
hunt. Yeah.
right.
And they had an app that they're using for high school and beyond planning. It kind of gamifies the idea of getting through high school and is
When did they want something? I mean, I'm sure we'd be happy to do that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
They haven't set a date, but what I'll do is call them back and say that you're willing and that the rest of the coordination can happen
Okay, that's
between
great.
Kim's people and hers.
Absolutely.
This is information and we can go ahead and coordinate something. Thank you, Rob. Next up, we have future agenda items. Obviously, plan is at our next board meeting for our reopening plan. I would like to get, since Bill's already working on it, I would like to hear more about what he's finding out about the fine arts things. So if
I
we
don't
can
think
get,
I can't address it because it's not on the agenda, but
just. if
we'll
you
make
can
it a future
make a board
agenda
up
item.
for
and
that.
You'll have answers quickly.
Okay. And then, now, most of them are already on the agenda, so, but that's a
Okay.
new one to add.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now the board is going to go into recess where we will sign documents. So the official board meeting part of this meeting is over. Then we will reconvene for a board workshop where we will have an equity policy presentation, a teaching and learning equity update, students on governing boards, and a legislative update. Then after that, we will go into an executive session for approximately 45 minutes to review the performance of a public employee. And then after that, we will be adjourned. I want to thank everybody who participated tonight. It's important that we hear from the community and we welcome you at any time. So please feel free to keep coming back. We have one citizen who's been coming and he still keeps coming back. So thank you very much. All right. to Clarissa Hightower so she could walk us through some the draft of a Evergreen Public Schools equity policy as a first draft for the board to review and let you go ahead, Clarissa. Does she have?
Yes.
Okay, great, perfect.
Thank you so much to the superintendent and the board. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our Equity Advisory Committee, who has been such a pleasure to work with. They work really hard and put many, many hours of their lives into making sure that the policy that we're going to be presenting to you today reflects the needs of our students and our community. There are 15 on the committee. However, a couple were not able to be with us tonight, but we're going to have the ones who are here with us tonight do a brief introduction of themselves. They'll let you know their name and the stakeholder group that they represent and a little bit about why they joined the committee. And then we'll go into the details of the draft and explain the 5 areas and the key topics. And so I'm going to turn it over to Susan Hong, our student stakeholder. She's going to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about why she decided to be a part of our committee.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Susan Hong and I'm currently a sophomore at Mountain View High School. And I wanted to join this committee because I've come to realize that I've been extremely lucky to have all the opportunities that I've had throughout my academic career. And I want to help ensure that all other students will be able to have these same chances to succeed no matter what their situation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jade Krieger. I am an Asian American parent in this district. I grew up whitewashing myself, accepting casual racism as an everyday occurrence from peers, teachers, coaches, complete strangers. So I minimized my Asianness. My daughter is a kindergartner in the district, and before she was born, I promised she would have the courage and support system that I didn't to be proud of who she is. I can't protect her from others' ignorance or prejudice, but I can teach her to be unapologetically Asian. I joined this committee to ensure that school, which she will be attending for the next 12 years, will be a space that will recognize, appreciate, and support its diversity and allow and encourage our children to be unapologetically themselves. Thank you.
Hi, folks. My name is Mikhail Oparin, and I am a Russian American. Moved here from Russia about 20 years ago, a little over. Today, I don't see myself living anywhere else. This is my home. I am a proud father of a Pioneer Elementary first grader, and I am here to contribute to my community.
My name is Jackie Weatherspoon, and I have been an Evergreen Public Schools parent since 2010. I have 3 children, classes of 23, 27. I wanted to be a committee and why this.
Greg Brown is next.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Brown, and I'm a parent and employee within the school district. The specific stakeholder group that I represent is school administrators. I wanted to be a part of the school district's Equity Advisory Committee because as a person of privilege and influence, I have an obligation to promote equity and disrupt inequitable systems, structures, and practices that inhibit the potential of those who do not have access and whose voice does not resonate.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Riendo, and I'm the instructional coach at Mountain View High School. I'm part of this work because I really believe that for if our educational system is just and equitable, we create better communities. And I think that education can be a revolutionary act that can liberate kids.
Hello, my name is Adriana Garcia. I have 2 students at the district, and I also am an employee, and I want to be part of this committee to first create a better community for my kids, but also to be the voice of all those Hispanic families that are not able to be here with you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mimi Knight. I am a proud Latina, first generation born US product of the American public school system. I have a 5-year-old. I'm a social worker serving individuals with developmental disabilities within Evergreen Public School District. This work is super important to me as I feel everyone should be included and have access to all educational opportunities that might be available. Thank you.
Christy's next. Christy, can you hear us? It's your turn, Christy. Introduce yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can barely hear you for some reason. My name is Christy Peake. I've been an educator in Evergreen for 27 years. My heart has always been in this work. My master's degree is in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in equity, ethics, and social justice. For me, this work is both personal and professional. I saw my own children and other students of color systematically pushed out by disparate and inequitable discipline policies, lowered expectations, and assumptions. I want every student in Evergreen to feel safe, valued, and have the only assumption be that they are full of potential and promise. And I represent certificated staff and liaison to the Evergreen Education Association.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Dingus. I am an Excel teacher here in the district in the part-time Excel program. And I wanted to be a part of this committee because as an adult, I have had a reckoning with my own privilege and position of power as a white woman in a system of oppression. And I am working to dismantle harmful systems and practices within our district and in other aspects of my life. And I think it's super important that we are bringing this work to the forefront in our district because this work is for our students and for what is best for our students. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ebony Mckenzie, and I joined this committee as one, an administrator within the district, and two, and more importantly, as a mom of 2 students that are current students in the school district. It is the reason why I joined this committee is I no longer wanted to sit on the sidelines and do work within my home with my own children to navigate the system, but I wanted to have a greater impact and a voice for all of our students within the school district. So the work is very important to me, and I needed to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So I am taking action and being part of this committee and making change in our district. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Ashley Cooper. I am an SLC teacher at Orchards Elementary. I've always seen the need for equity in schools as a BIPOC student and now as a SPED teacher. I saw this committee as an opportunity to be actively involved in the change I've long desired to see. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Washington, and I am part of the parent stakeholder group. I have a son who is in middle school at Y East, and I am part of this committee to engage action. Similar to Ebony, my son has experienced racism just even in his young years. And so for me, this really began in third grade. He had an opportunity learning persuasive writing. And I saw the end result of this project and the brainstorming, and I got home his folder, and it said the choices he had to choose from, that he had self-identified that he wanted to write and research and persuade his community about as a third grader were convincing my parents to let me eat all the chicken fingers I want every day for every meal. Option 1. Option 2 was petition the principal at Marion Elementary School to enforce that we teach Black history in his classroom. And he chose to spend his curriculum hours developing that persuasive essay. And upon getting his final grade, asked his teacher, can we go send it to the principal? Can we go give it to the principal? And the teacher said, oh, honey, it was just an assignment. I'm so glad you took it seriously. And so I'm part of the stakeholder group. Similarly, I want to teach him how to navigate the system, but we also need to equip our teachers to respond to the needs of every student they're serving so that he can be successful and at peace with his education. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for your introductions. I appreciate you. We're going to go ahead and move into the presentation. I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see. Okay. Can you see the slides? Can anybody see the slides? Okay. Okay, just making sure. All right. We did our introductions. That's us. So we're going to talk with you about 5 of the key areas of the policy itself, the process that we took to draft it, the purpose for it, the commitments, accountability, and then there is a section on definitions, and we'll just talk briefly about why we added that. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it to our first group to talk about process, the process we took to create the draft that you have before you.
As a parent, I'm just one of the many stakeholder categories represented by the members of this group. We started the process of creating this policy by surfacing our priorities and concerns. Getting other perspectives on my own stakeholder issues was eye-opening. There was a lot of give and take. We compiled multiple lists and prioritized them based on timeliness, what could be done now versus what would need more time, long-term versus short-term goals, and factors around implementation. Stakeholder categories include parents, students, classified staff, certificated staff, community members, and administrators. Next slide.
Part of our process included reviewing current policies adopted and implemented in other school districts. All of these districts reside within the Pacific Northwest region. We made considerations regarding the following: formatting, presentation, and appearance. We also looked at the documents to make sure ours would be clear, accessible, and applicable for anyone to reference regardless of role or position within the school district. Next slide, please.
We're on the collaboration and compilation slide.
Sorry. We compiled and gathered information and discussed priorities based on short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. We checked for understanding and formatting to make sure the document was user-friendly and accessible for all. We as a team had the opportunity to review and update the document before finalizing it. We edited and reviewed the topics and came to an agreement regarding what is important for all stakeholders. And now we are going to learn about our committee's purpose. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Next slide. As a committee, we have identified the utmost importance around equity. We must be intentional and consistent with this work. We acknowledge that racism, discrimination, and biases have a deep, lasting negative impact on students. This policy will address all inequities that students live with. As an identified Black female, I personally fall under this category. I had my first racialized experience in 3rd grade. My teacher dismissed me and made me feel othered. This policy will ensure that every student has a champion. Next slide, please.
Past and current data clearly indicates that the #1 predictor of highest and lowest performance is race. Race predicts outcome even when controlled for poverty and special programs. Not only can we predict achievement based on race, but we can also accurately predict well-being and a sense of belonging or a lack of. From the Latin derivation, the word predict, predicare, to make known beforehand. If we can make known beforehand now how students will perform and feel in school based on their race, we must directly address racial equity to change these outcomes. Our goal is to create a district culture that supports all students by addressing practices and behaviors of both individuals and institution that perpetuate bias or ambivalence in making safe and nurturing spaces for all. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Christy. So what does the purpose of inclusion and full engagement mean? Well, inclusion and full engagement in our schools means that all students and their families have safe and equitable access, feel a deep sense of belonging, experience a welcoming classroom and school community where the instruction is strengths-based, is aligned to or exceeds the grade level and subject standards. And last but not least, culturally responsive. You know, as a member of LGBTQ+, and as a Russian American, I can personally relate to being an outcast of my own community on one hand, while lacking identity and representation as a Russian American and being marginalized on the other, and often washed with white culture. That's not my identity. The purpose of this policy is to commit the district to address inequities and biases towards students and their families whose voices are or access have been marginalized in conjunction with their race, disability, native language, sexual orientation or expression, culture, low income, or religion. I thank you for your time, and now Vanessa is going to talk about the approach to address inequities.
Thank you, Mikhail. We cannot change what is not named. This policy names our district's belief that a student's race will not dictate their success or failure within our schools. Change requires planning. This policy has been crafted, planned, and revised with community input from stakeholder groups and various demographics that we serve within our schools. This policy isolates race because the outcomes within Evergreen School District are racially predictable and therefore currently inequitable. Now we're going to pass it over to look at commitments.
Thank you. So today we are asking you to commit not to us, but to all students, families, staff, and community of Evergreen. Next slide, please. So we ask you to provide a system-wide direction to advance equity. We ask you to affirm, inspire, and serve each and every student in our diverse population, especially the ones who face significant barriers, by creating opportunities and removing those barriers to nurture traits in each and every student. We ask you to engage in ongoing development and learning opportunities that address inequities and biases that impact students, staff, and families in our community, that create feelings of fear, lack of belonging, academic and social emotional barriers that reduce academic participation and performance. We ask you to ensure that our policies directly address racism, bias, and discrimination, providing positive guidance and expectation, and intentionally developing reporting and investigation processes. We ask you to use the most current data and research to dismantle the current systems that generate inequity outcomes in the district. And finally, we ask you to review and update policies regularly to ensure they proactively advance an equitable and exceptional education for all students. Next slide, please.
Krista is another district parent on this committee. She couldn't join us tonight, but these are her words as to why it is important that the school board commit to this policy. Research shows that committing is the key to engaging in the process of transformation. Committing to these policies means we can imagine different lives for our children. This commitment will strengthen our relationships at every level within the district and our school communities. It means you are choosing to do the hard work with us together, and that as a board, you are courageous enough to recognize mistakes, repair them, and move forward. By committing to engage in this equity work, the board will be making the choice to create a more equitable future and reality for our children, students, and staff. Next slide. With this policy, we expect commitment at the district level as well. Commit to acknowledging that our school district community is diverse, socially, racially, culturally, and in family structure, and adopt curriculum and strategies that reflect that. Eliminate harmful practices and systems that generate inequitable outcomes, ensure equitable access to resources, programs, and activities, actively work to remove disciplinary actions that are undertaken without bias and/or disproportionality, provide access to learning resources and remove barriers, support, recruit, hire, and promote a diverse workforce, and foster professional development while proactively addressing racial equity, implicit bias, anti-discrimination, cultural responsiveness, and inclusion. Apply our district's equity lens to decision-making processes that occur at the building, district, and school board levels. Intentionally create and foster strong partnerships with diverse groups of parents and stakeholders, and increase direct family engagement, especially with families whose students may face barriers. Next slide.
Nothing can highlight the importance of these district commitments like student story and voice. Not long ago, my school conducted interviews with Black and Brown students to ask them about their feelings of belonging in our school and classrooms. A Latino student who's dear to me, who I'll refer to as Jonathan, told me that as a freshman, he was told by a school lunch employee that he should go back to his country. Jonathan, who in my experience is a fast learner, someone who may have in a more equitable world been identified as a gifted Excel student, also told me in his math class he earned a B, but never actually learned or did anything. His takeaway from that experience was that teachers just passed him along no matter if he showed his learning or not. Perhaps most devastating was that this student saw himself as stupid. This apparent easy grade didn't make him feel good. It made him feel like he didn't belong and his failure or success didn't matter. Despite all the evidence I had accumulated in observing Jonathan, evidence that spoke to his brilliance, flexible thinking, and ability to come through productive struggle with new insights, he often told me he was too stupid to do well in class. Sadly, most of his grades predicated on inequitable systems, affirmed that for him. I suppose research is right. The identity we affirm the most in students becomes the identity that's most resilient. American schools have long had systems that affirm the wrong identities in our gifted, beautiful Black and Brown students. Jonathan brings a lot with him to school. He has capital that's been overlooked, unrecognized, and undervalued. That isn't an accident. It's a precedent we have created with the systems and structures in place. These new district commitments dismantle white supremacy and recreate education as revolutionary. Our teachers and staff want what's best for kids, but they're ill prepared without a district commitment to support a reinvention of curriculum, behavioral interventions, and professional development. The need is clear from the micro level of Jonathan's story to the macro level data that shows 75% of our Brown and Black students aren't accessing the kind of curriculum that makes them ready for post-secondary life. Their notable absence in our most rigorous curriculum, AP Lang and Lit, Calculus, AP US History, and college level child psychology, to name a few, means students who are there are missing the perspectives, intellectual power, and presence of their Black and Brown classmates. The education for all students is worse because of systems of white supremacy. Jonathan has so much to offer those classrooms, and with new commitments, our district may just see the next Jonathan enriching our schools in a way he was always capable of. Systems of white supremacy are dismantled when commitments are held to by systems of accountability, and we'll speak to those next.
Thank you. We're going to talk about accountability. Next slide, please. Our accountability section is broken into two different categories: the annual accountability reporting and recommendations section and the reporting with an equity lens section. And this accountability section is vital to our equity policy. We can lay forth a perfect list of goals and intentions for achieving equity in Evergreen Public Schools, but without accountability, those words will ultimately ring hollow. In order to ensure that we are following through with our commitments, we have laid out some steps to hold ourselves accountable in this work. These steps will help us monitor our effectiveness as a district and make necessary adjustments along the way to better support all students, especially those from historically marginalized populations.
Without question, we want to see improved outcomes for our students and community, and are also aware that focusing solely on these cumulative outcomes does not fundamentally transform our system. Doing so can lead to deficit mindsets. It lends itself to labeling our students and communities as damaged, something or someone that needs to be fixed. This is why we intentionally focus on adult behaviors in the accountability and reporting component of the policy. We know that observable and measurable changes in adult behaviors within our system, our schools, and our classrooms will lead to the results we need to see for our students and our community.
At least once a year, the district will monitor, evaluate, and report progress on these commitments. This will help emphasize the essential role adults play in creating and maintaining an environment that positively influences student outcomes. We, as students, cannot carry the entire weight of change on our shoulders without collapsing. We need you to help lift this burden. Only then, with support and accountability from adults, will we be able to rise up beyond the stereotypes and obstacles set by our history. Next, we'll be covering some definitions of the terms used in this presentation. Next slide.
Our committee member, Yelena, was not able to stay on as late as we are on tonight. And she was going to do this section, so I'll do it for her. And in addition to the other section that our committee has just laid out to you, we have a definitions section as well, so that when our reader, or the reader of the policy, can understand what we mean as a district when we say these words. In my experience and in the experiences of other members of the committee, conversations and actions based on those conversations are often influenced by misunderstanding or not enough clarity around some of the very key words as it relates to equity work. And so we have added a section on definitions, and with the understanding that that section will grow as our equity work expands. So that concludes the summary and the review of the policy itself. And for those members who were able to stay on, we thank you and we thank the board. And if you all have any questions at this time, we are happy to answer them.
I'm thinking about the way that we have our policies and procedures structured into the coherent governance model we've been using. And I think experiencing the document for pretty much the first time in detail like this, I think I see something that has, each section has a place in that structure. So one of my questions becomes whether the draft in its form as a document in those pages and in that order is part of what you're proposing we adopt. or whether we can take the elements that appear to, for example, belong in a superintendent's interpretation under coherent governance, which is not a model I expect anybody to recognize immediately. It's just the name of the model we're using. The definitions would go in that superintendent's interpretation and become policy through something that's structured a little differently. In short, is it important to you that we keep the document exactly as it is, or if we break it up, if we break that up into those pieces while keeping all of the wording and things and all of that work, is that going to pose a problem?
And members can jump in. As long as the integrity of each of the sections remain and the intentions behind them remain, we realize that there are going to have to be some formatting and structural changes. Tonight was the presentation of it as is, so that when those formatting changes were shared with us, we would know what those look like and make sure that the integrity remains.
That was one of the questions I had, is that we'll need to tweak this into our governance policy model, which I think we'll be able to do easily enough. One of the questions that I had to do with, as we talk about adults, was there ever any discussion about, as we look at this from the adult behaviors, do we have a place on our, to have a rubric or something in our performance evaluations so that individual adults can also be evaluated on all of that? I don't know what that looks like. I'm just asking, was there any discussion about, because we have accountability measures for the district, but we need to drill it down to every level of, make sure we're systemically making change, I guess is what I'm after.
Yeah, that discussion did happen as we were talking about the accountability section, knowing that the idea is that we want to make sure that accountability is a definite, but the way in which we do that, whether it's a rubric, whether it's adding language to other things that exist, like we talked about, partnering with EAA or EEA on some things. But yes, that could be something that is created together, knowing that we need something in place to monitor and help us with accountability measures. Absolutely. And back to this, if we break it down, it feels like it needs to be complete, like it's all together in one document.
The school board commitments piece would probably go somewhere in our governance culture policy, but maybe if we take these pieces out and with each piece we reference the document, it was prepared by parents, students, teachers, etc., and memorialize that as well, we might accomplish more.
I guess in my mind, as we started talking about this policy years ago, right, that I kind of saw it as our kind of like our overarching results policy. This is our overarching equity policy, like everything we stand for resides in this policy. And so it feels like if we start breaking some of it down, putting some of culture and some over here, and then I don't know if I feel like the intent of the original document might get broken down a little bit. And I like the part about the reporting because that follows our operational expectations. So that's the only part that maybe I would see us pulling out of it, and maybe put on how we track these things. But the rest of it, I can see it all
just being our district equity policy.
Yeah, and I think we can just add it as another, board policy. Because I noticed, because that was my question, how do we fit it in there? And I think we could take this, because we have talked about having, instead of breaking things up and having equity essences throughout our other policies, to have an overarching policy. And I think we could make this, move this into the format, because it's got kind of our purpose or our belief, and then the different components that we want to see play out. It's got the accountability piece. It's got the different components. I think we can tweak this into making it work so it becomes one of our board policies that fits in with our other policies but isn't broken apart. And then we can reference it in other of the individual policies if we want to reference certain sections of it as some kind of a note, that other policy that, like where we have things about discipline or, whatever. We have to tweak this because we asked for the policy and we asked for input about the policy. Now what we have to do, because we're just seeing it, is really dissect it among the board and look at how we can make this fit into our governance model, because the governance model will hold everybody accountable, because that's the way we do things. And we've lost track of that, I think, a little over, the last year and a half with COVID and stuff, but we need to get ourselves back into that and have that be a definite of how the board is running and how we look at these things. So we need to go through, because as a board member, I want to really believe in everything I'm committing to, which right now everything looks great, but I want to make sure we're not missing anything either. And because these are our commitments as a board, and we want to make sure that we put this in the format that gives us the strongest position to make things happen. And I think that's just my take on it for right now.
Keep coming. I've been looking over how the policies are structured, results, governance, culture, and so forth. And I took a look around it because board docs is popping up in districts all over the state now, giving us a look into how they're organizing themselves. A lot of policy and coherent governance approaches just put them in the 1000 section and declare that the board's perfect. That's just kind of a structural argument. Because we're used to seeing long policies, long comprehensive policies in the policy book, but not in the R policies or the GCs, which are shorter and they delegate specifically, right? Those are about the roles and the expectations. I don't think there's a results policy in this document. I think we have to still write it. But yeah, I agree with the sense that we have to keep the document in a place where we can hold ourselves accountable as a unit. Yeah.
The results and what we commit to. Create opportunities, address inequities, work with the district, develop, maintain, provide consistent correction.
Third page.
All of those feel like they're measurable, and then accountability and reporting are probably things that result.
I think right now we don't have to make all of these things. I mean, I personally think this is a great document. I think the work that's been done has been really good work and really has given us what we were looking for input onto how to move forward with our equity work and have it be policy driven and have the accountability that we want to make sure after we're long gone, it still holds true. And so now it's on us to have that structural piece. Because I want to just look at it even more and have more chance to discuss it to make sure we're not missing anything. I mean, I want to find out what the ramifications are regarding any kind of like performance evaluation piece, or, I mean, those are some things that I think have part of this. I personally,
ultimately,
the
if you're
whole
gonna,
group may not decide that, but we need to have more in-depth discussion about our commitments and everything, because
how it plays out.
and how, yeah. But I think we are definitely there.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Mentioned Bellevue and Portland and North Clackamas. Is this pretty similar to what you saw in those districts, or did you kind of take that and then put our own voice into it? Or I'm just curious how that process went.
Just we took some of the structures from those other districts. They also have, governance that they have to, adhere to. So we took the structure, but we took community voice and stakeholder voice so that it is tailored to the needs of our district. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure in our committee is wanted me to make sure that I say is that we realize that there are things that might cause the policy to have to change the way it looks. We'd like to keep it intact. We were intentional about how we put it together. And if the previous structures that were in place allowed for monitoring to fall off or accountability to fall off, it's worrisome moving forward if we want to make what we've done fit that when it has that potential to fall off. And I don't think anyone intends for things to fall off, but it's really important to us that it stays, the integrity of the document stays. And if there's a template that we should follow or a way in which it should be, I would love it if we could see that. And if we need to look at other governance policies or our own and then go back and look at that, because we don't want any of the thoughtfulness and the community input to leave the document because of this breaking up of it. So I understand that you have to look at it more. I totally get that. And we hope that you will allow us to give further input if it changes drastically.
Can't imagine it changing drastically at all.
No, it's such beautiful work. I think we could stay in consultation with them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I think the work has been amazing, and I'm so appreciative of the time and effort that people have put into this, because it has resulted in a really good document. And I feel like it really represents, like you said, our community, our school community, our outward community. It also represents what we've been looking for to make our goals for our equity work become more of a reality. And I feel that's, I'm appreciative of that, because it's something that we've had a lot of discussion. We've kind of fought for a while, and to see it coming to fruition is really exciting to me. I know. Exciting to have all that participation. Are there any comments from oh, I don't want to say the audience, but any others from staff about any of this at this point, or? Something, Julie?
I just want to ask what, I know that we need to take a deeper dive, but like, what's our next step then as a board?
I think the next step would be one that we just really have a chance to look it over in detail, because like I said, you know, with us just receiving it, make sure that any of us who have any additions or tweaks to this, that you forward them over to me. And then need to have another workshop just going over any changes or any suggested changes. We need to look, I might have you help me, Rob, on the formatting part. Love all that stuff so much. And yes, I know it is a compulsion, and I appreciate that compulsion most of the time. So I'd like us to be able to get the formatting thing situated and anything else that may surface that as people really do a deep dive into the document itself. But it's definitely a.
So then once we have that, we get some more and back to you, then we'll bring it back to another workshop after Rob's taken a look and done some formatting. And then after that workshop, when it comes back for our normal first and second reading.
Yeah, just like we would do with any of our governance policies. I think it's really important too that the cabinet has a chance to really look at it. And Bill, you should probably look at it and see where you think you can enhance or help us with these accountability side of things. That's okay with you. Okay, good. That's good. Like that. Okay, well, that sounds good. Do you have any other questions for us, Clarissa?
Yes, in the next workshop, will we have the opportunity as a committee to add comments or, I don't know, suggestions after we see what the rendition is, after you all look at it, meaning with all the changes that are going to be made, we will still have the opportunity to say, we feel like this piece is missing this, you know. Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think we would be making anything substantial changes.
Just maybe more clarifying questions, maybe wording as changes. Usually that's the only thing that we do, but it's more of just structuring it to fit within the current structure of our governance, not and trying to do it to where we don't have to break any of it up altogether.
There's going to be a way.
Yeah, there'll be a way. We'll make it work.
Okay, so that's the goal, is to try to keep it intact.
Yes, yes,
And,
absolutely.
I don't know, Mike, if you make Clarissa available for a couple of questions in the meantime.
Clarissa is always available.
I might call you with a Google Doc link.
We'll run that through me first before, so we can look, so that we can look at it first.
Unbelievable. Yes, absolutely.
All thinking the same thing. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right. Okay, next up.
Clarissa is going to do a teaching.
Clarissa gets to come back.
Okay.
She's got the microphone, so she gets to keep talking.
Mike, you stole the teaching and learning mojo. I was just going to give some summer school updates, which you kind of already did. So I'll just give a little bit more detail than what you added. So for elementary, we had over 130 applications from teachers coming in for summer school positions, which is what allowed us to add that fourth school. So we had high interest from the elementary population to work for summer. And so we'll be able to service 1,000 students in June and 800 in August. For middle school, we had over 40 applications for that. And so that allows us to run a program for 500 students at each of the middle school sites. And then for high school, we had around 30 applicants, a little over 30 applicants for both June and August programs, which means that we'll be able to serve 900 students for the summer programs for high school. So that's just a little bit more detail from what Mike was talking about earlier, and that's all for the teaching and learning update this evening.
I had a question. When we were talking about the summertime learning, was there any talk about having it be more of a full day like a normal school day would be? Because the one thing that we've heard a lot from parents on is the short time and the challenge that is for parents, when especially working parents, being able to break away to come get their student from school, and that it didn't feel like it was as robust as we kind of said it was going to be. Do you know what the thoughts were on that?
Yes, we did some work with Education Northwest as far as what the best practice would be for summer. And we also did the surveys. So when parents were able to tell us whether or not what they wanted in a summer school program, I do believe they provided input on the duration of the day. And so in addition to what teachers would be willing to do over the summer, all of those things, three things combined is what gave us the 9 to 12 day program with the potential for enrichment or expansion in some of, I believe it's the middle school, and but let me verify that for you before I say that. But with the potential for expansion for enrichment after that day.
Has there been any talk about maybe some kind of after school, more of a childcare model or something that's more not so educational, but more help parents not have to?
I don't think that has been talked
We hadn't
about.
talked about just a child care model in general. We did talk about, addition to academics, the social emotional learning piece for our students to be a part of a component of the summer school, but not child care.
Thanks, Clarissa.
Thank you. Great work with the team, that's for sure. So next up, we have Jenny is going to talk to us about our moving more steps closer to our students on governing boards. Take it away, Jenny. A little help from Rob.
Rob's got the policy section of it, so you want to go?
Jenny sent me language, and I copy pasted it into a document formatted like a governance culture policy and named it GC10. And then added the words, the superintendent will work with the board to establish and maintain procedure GC10P, which is when I began thinking maybe these ought to be like 0,000 series or something that matches the rest of the policy book. But it's actually not a substantive thought in this sense. And then governing the eligibility requirements and selection process students will use, which is clumsy wording and needs some editing for sure. But the idea is a governing culture policy that didn't seem to me to fit into our ad hoc committee list along with the IMC, because we're calling them advisory non-voting members of the board and not a committee reporting to the board. So that's the reason that it sits in a new policy proposal. And then the opposite side of the page is a blank space for whatever procedure gets developed and finalized, which we don't have to adopt as a policy through 2 readings. We just put it in, right?
I'm trying to find, because I got sent a copy.
But this?
A copy.
Yeah.
Want this?
There was one area that caught my eye.
And it's to the associate body. So when it's talking about associated student body, it is not actually talking about the ASB.
Yes. There was a liaison for the associated student body of their assigned high schools. But we're not talking ASB, we're talking just the general
Body of
student body.
students.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Because I feel like we still haven't really kind of defined like how we communicate with this group, but this document, in the second to last paragraph, the student representatives will contribute to board discussions, but will not attend. That makes it sound like they're all going to be here. So is that the thought? Is that this group of students will attend every school board meeting, or we will have like separate meetings with them where we garner specific feedback? Like maybe we would take the equity policy to them and get their thoughts as we're doing revisions. I'm just curious.
And what it could look like is, yes, like what you're just talking about on some bigger things. We give them kind of an assignment, but then I would think that we would want to have a couple of student representatives that attend the board meetings just so they can report back to the bigger committee of just the general things that we're talking about. But that's a piece that needs to be worked out in the procedure side.
Yeah, and that procedure side is still, I haven't been able to get in contact with one of the students that was here, so I'm trying to get everybody on the same page. And we've already kind of gone over my deadlines, so I had a kind of opt into and project plan timelines to get everything done. So we're already kind of passing that. Basically, this was policy through because it has to do that, this start even the applications process. The intention kind of discuss a lot of these with the student for to bring back. But a proposal back to us or to the board to discuss how the procedures, because I have a lot. WASDA actually has a general, so it has a lot of boilerplate language in it, which is the same for other districts that I've reviewed. It's all very similar. However, they usually one, maybe two. It is going to look differently for us. So in reporting to the board, I would like all of us to know the student reps, not all of them here, obviously, but maybe where they assign a speaker to come talk to us about the topics or what's going on, or they have, maybe certain people that cover certain topics.
Like they have a rotating schedule of
just to get them all comfortable, because if you're on a team with that many people and all of a sudden you're never getting an opportunity to kind of, if they want to come and speak to us, I guess it's also their option, but this is kind of.
Because we want that group to get together and work and then be like.
Exactly.
Because even one of our thoughts too, and I don't even know, I can't remember if we discussed it with the students that came to our last meeting, but I think that we even looked at it as they work with feeder schools and they bring all of that feedback up, and then they discuss it in our group, and then whatever that looks like, having 2 at a time come to our meetings and give us our report of like things that they're working on or whatever. But and I agree with Victoria said that I was envisioning it like we would give them policy, and then we'd be like, we want you to look at it from your lens and tell us what you think. So
hot topics. Got a hot topic going on, or what is your school's hot topic, and bringing those, because each school But, you know, I think in the in certain, you know, but yes, it is intended to happen.
One other thing for me is I love this idea because I think this is going to be a great group in getting, you know, the student voice. But I still really enjoy, even though we haven't been able to do it in the last year, but our breakfast with the board and going out and just meet. The more kids that we can engage and students that we can engage with, the better. And so even if there's other students that come to those, I think that would be, if we can continue that.
Have to give it,
Okay.
we just are adding.
We're adding.
Y'all love those breakfasts with the board. They're fun and they're very informative.
Well, and I want it to also be a an opportunity for the students. How we operate, and that's why I don't want to limit the amount of representation up to. I don't want this to be too thumbed on by the board. I want the committee to their own guidance from us, but also, you know, help to have it looked at it by. Poor girls on the committee, and she's there hasn't been much. Well, and it's more of an optional because not every student could come. One student can't come, you know, possibly to every board meeting if they have other things. So it's an option for them to come, but to always have or to know who the two are going to be. Their names are on the agenda, so we know who's presenting, and we're not kind of like, you know, yeah, like that.
I was misled a little bit by the words.
I know that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I'll put, let's get her moving. Okay, next up, do we have any legislative updates at the transportation?
I don't have
one?
anything.
Two or three legislative positions we might be asked to sign on to as a board in the proposal process, which, as you know, goes through the yearly cycle and so forth. So we could, and I don't think we need to vote for those. We just need to know what the consensus is, and then we can say Evergreen supports this. And if there's correction to that, I probably should be told. But that's the sense of it that I'm getting.
Info and,
yeah, that's the sense of it that I'm getting from Abigail and so forth. But there's like a remote learning position coming, and there's one interesting one out of a Spokane director about asking the state to supply statewide cloud infrastructure for things like curriculum, where economies of scale can work out for that. Similar to what the Washington State University system has for all of its campuses. And we'll know more as the legislative committee meets and develops the proposals. And it's with the board Julie's on. Fun.
Okay, so we are going to adjourn the workshop portion of the meeting and we will go into executive session for about 45 minutes. Hopefully, if it takes longer, we'll let you know. Thank you for being with us.